But like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, they're simulated violence.
It's a criminal simulator, a murder simulator.
Yeah, Evan Ramsey, others like...
I wouldn't let my kids play these games because I think they're immoral, frankly.
How about video games, Ethan? Would you support regulating video games? You know, there are video games out there that are very realistic, and you can shoot to death, you know, every video character on the screen and leave them lying in a pool of blood.
Vicious, violent video games with names like Bulletstorm, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, and Splatterhouse.
What about the violence in our video games?
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence.
We are training our kids to be killers.
Really? I walked into work on Monday morning, and as I was drinking my coffee, I was looking at the news headlines of some things that have happened over the weekend. As I was looking through these headlines, I noticed a trend that kept popping up, talking about video games and violence. If you clicked on this video, chances are you've heard this argument time and time again by either like parents, teachers, politicians, people who probably have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. Now, in any other video like this, you're going to find people that bring up scientific articles that say video games and violence, there's not a correlation there. I'm not going to do that. Instead of talking about science and how it's going to, change people's minds, I'd really like to just talk about society itself. With all the senseless death happening, I really kind of understand why people want to point the finger at something. And to tell you the truth, video games are the fucking perfect scapegoat. Now you might be thinking, wait, what the fuck? But please bear with me while I try to explain my stance here. I promise it's not as bad as you're probably thinking. Since the dawn of time, pointing the finger at somebody or something else has been the way to ignore the real problems in society. Yikes. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that pays attention to history, because it happens a lot. And I know of the 5 friends that are probably watching this, at least one of them pays attention to that. However, instead of trying to sit down and have a dialogue about the real causes of these problems, it's us. We humans will generally use tragedy to further our political, religious, or personal agendas. This isn't something new. This happens, a lot. Hitler blamed the Jews for the economic plight of Germany after the devastation of their economy after World War I. Caesar started a defensive war with the Celts because he was in a shit ton of debt and he just wanted to get the fuck out of it, dude. And Mao Zedong killed some birds because, fuck birds? Or something like that. Hell, I use my failing economy in Stellaris to justify invading those pesky aliens next to me, when in reality, I'm just bored and want to start some shit. We, as humans, exploit situations to our advantage all the fucking time. Now, I'm not trying to say the evil of Hitler or Mao Zedong is on any level the same as accusing video games as a reason for violent behavior in children. All I'm trying to say is that both of them are in the same playbook. When something happens, some tragedy, and people are looking for answers, it's easy to just go to your gut reaction rather than thinking things through and finding a real solution. So when something like El Paso or Dayton or Parkland happens, it must seem like a lot easier for politicians and parents to blame video games on our societal problems than it is to admit that we may be part of the problem. For politicians, it's money and unpopularity that probably drives their attack. They literally have the power to fix this problem, but it's more cost-effective to blame video games every time some kids die in a classroom than it is to grow a pair and pass a law. Media, it's something that they can roll anytime to get more views. because it's controversial and points the finger at something other than themselves, even though they sort of glorify these fucking killers by like putting their names and their tactics in their news. And for the older generation, like my parents, it's probably a lot easier to blame something they have no experience or knowledge about and talk about how the younger generations are fucked than it is to actually come up with real solutions. Now, you might be thinking,
oh wait, Hansi, you're kind of pointing the finger at politicians, the media, and older people for these problems.
Hey, Jimmy. Double standard!
As badly as I want to say that these groups are the conduits for these problems, I really can't say that they are. I bring up these groups because these are the groups that are attacking video games as the culprit of violence in society, when all of us watching this video pretty much know that this isn't the case.
Well, what is the problem, Hansi?
Truth is, I don't really know. I could point to a couple different issues that reflect my own personal beliefs, but that's not really where I want this video to go. Instead, I want to take a shot at trying to explain their side of the argument before I tell them that they're wrong. A part of the conversation that gets drowned out a lot in the war on video games is the positivity that video games can bring to a young kid's life. I understand that when parents see their dumb 7-year-old carjacking an old lady in Grand Theft Auto and going on to bang a hooker outside of Denny's, that they probably get a little bit worried about what that's doing to their kids' brains. I have a personal story about this that made me kind of understand their perspective. When I was in college, I attended a family Christmas party. Now I have a pretty large family on my mom's side, and I'm on the older side of my 25 cousins or so. It was a wonderful, festive time when we were all enjoying ourselves. But when my 11-year-old cousin chainsawed an enemy to death in Gears of War on the family room TV, it got a little awkward trying to explain to Grandma that I was a fan of video games. When the news airs clips like the one I just described, it's easy to see why it freaks so many people out. To those who haven't played video games, it's a little uncomfortable. And that's why context in these situations matter. You're chainsawing a dude in Gears of War because his whole goal is to destroy humanity. You mass murder people in an airport during Modern Warfare 2 because it develops the story and adds to the seriousness of the game. You bang a hooker in Grand Theft Auto because, well, shit, dog, you gotta do it once, right? I only bring this up because on the outside looking in, it looks pretty bad. The idea of explaining the Modern Warfare 2 airport mission to my fiance is a literal nightmare to me. Unless she had played through all the other games and missions, it would look like you were just a literal terrorist just having a heyday. But to the rest of us who have played those games, context matters, and we understand that it develops a story. And to people trying to figure out what's causing all of these mass shootings and terrible acts, video games may be the big bad evil dad that makes everybody sad. What I don't like about this is they never talk about what video games do positively. For me, video games have been a large part of my life. I grew up playing the games, and they made a very profound impact on the way I view things in my life. They were there when I was lonely, when I was bored, and when I didn't want to read some stupid book that didn't even have no pictures or nothing. The first game that I ever completed was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This game had such a large impact in my life that I play it every fucking year. This game taught me so much more than how to hit an enemy with the Master Sword. It taught me to face my fears in the Shadow Temple, taught me to not give up and to persevere in the face of challenge, and ultimately it taught me to be creative in the way I approach things. I mean, this game stuck with me so much that I own a goddamn Master Sword. That's how much it means to me. I still connect with people about this game 20 years later, and it creates friendships that I never would have had otherwise. Another one is the first Call of Duty on PC. It captured my imagination with history so effectively that I went on to get 2 degrees related to history. It actually got me to read a book with no pictures or nothing. In Counter-Strike Global Offensive, for how much it sucks nubs to get called racial slurs because I couldn't get a smoke in the right place, it introduced me to some of my best friends. To a kid that's honestly shitty at sports and likes to jerk it too often, video games were a good alternative that taught me a lot about life in general. But this right here? Oh, this is some violent shit.
I think I'm close enough. There's a sniper like in this bush.
Now, before someone gets all up in my ass about this, let's make something clear. Video games are pretty goddamn violent. No way around it. Not all video games, but a lot of them are. I've personally done some real gnarly shit in some video games.
You lock yourself in, or you go out and do some stuff?
Oh, I do some pretty bad stuff.
Oh, I bet you do, old-timer.
But has this made me more violent in my life? No. Probably the opposite. Despite all the violent shit in GTA, Call of Duty, Red Dead Redemption, Halo, or whatever game people accuse nowadays, I truly don't think this is the problem, and I'll tell you why. Video games are violent, but they don't make you violent. You see, back in the day, this little thing called the Entertainment Software Rating Board was formed, or as you probably know them, ESRB, the guys on the box. Basically, it went through video games and rated them based on violence, language, content, etc., adding age restrictions and who can purchase them, you know, kind of like what they do with television and movies. You see, some smart people saw the shitstorm coming from like a mile away and developed ways to monitor who can see this sort of content. While the ESRB isn't perfect, it absolutely provided something that the video game industry desperately needed.
But wait, Hansi, kids can still get their parents to buy those for them.
Well, you're right, but at that point, it's not a video game problem anymore. It's a parenting problem. If you have a problem with 7-year-olds playing GTA, I get it. I wouldn't want my toddler playing that game either. But at 17, when you can buy mature-rated games, you can obviously tell the difference between shooting a guy in GTA and shooting a person in real life. And that's exactly my problem with the people who are blaming video games for the violence that they're seeing in society. It's fucking ridiculous. Don't get mad at developers for making games that the rest of us like because you can't read mature content and you buy it for your toddler anyway. When I was younger, my parents didn't want me playing GTA or Halo or anything like that. I had to sneak over to some of my friends' houses to play Halo, which I'm glad I did. I'm 25 now, and I'm sure that they hate that I play Grand Theft Auto now, but it didn't ruin my life or make me violent. Got an education, a job, a home. I'm generally doing pretty well. And look, I'm not anything special. I'm just an average guy from the Midwest who plays video games a lot. And that's part of the argument, is that there's millions of kids that play video games that go on to lead normal lives. Which is why I think it has something to do with mental health, but that's a whole separate can of worms that I don't really want to open right now. But it sure as hell isn't video games that are causing these problems. I want to stick with this GTA thing really quick, just as an example, because that seems to be the big bad daddy that makes everybody saddy. First, I want to say that by demonizing Grand Theft Auto, you just make kids want to play it more. The DARE program in elementary school told me not to smoke cigarettes because they're bad, and that just made me want to smoke cigarettes even more, and when I could get my hands on one, oh, I smoked them. But when people shit all over GTA, it just makes me laugh, because it's a parody on real life. Rockstar didn't have to create a whole new universe like Mass Effect or Halo did. There was a foundation there, and they just fucking make fun of it the whole game. Like this guy at the beginning of my fucking video.
But like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, they're simulated violence.
It's a criminal simulator, a murder simulator.
Yeah, Evan.
I'm willing to bet that this guy has never played Grand Theft Auto. Later on in this interview, this guy goes on to talk about how simulations are used in the military to prepare people for actually taking another person's life. To me, that's much more concerning than some kid telling me he's gonna fuck my mom on Xbox Live.
Are they using these in Army Ranger training? Do they do video simulation now?
But we do it with law enforcement and military training. We use simulators. You don't see them in Ranger School, but you see it as an integral part of our training. to make killing a conditioned response is part of modern training. We've got to do it. Healthy people have to be trained to kill, and the video games do the same thing to the kids.
And
Healthy people have to be trained to kill. Oh, wow. Now, I get that mentally preparing yourself to take another person's life is like a harsh reality that many people in the military and law enforcement have to face. But that's just batshit crazy. That guy should not be on the news whatsoever. I can tell you with 100% certainty that these video games did not teach me how to use a firearm, swing a sword, shoot a bow and arrow, or kill a person. Like, it's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation. It's kind of funny, actually. The first time I shot a gun was with my fiance's dad. He took me to the shooting range, and it was fucking embarrassing how poor I was at handling that weapon. He never invited me back because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And I've been playing shooters since I was like 7 years old. Alright, back to GTA. Sorry for that. While GTA emulates life in a way, they turn the fucking dial up to 11. But hookers, gang life, police shootouts, carjackings, and robberies, like all of these happen in real life, and we're acting like it's video games that are causing these problems. As my good friend William Shakespeare said, life imitates... Oh shit, I got it wrong. It's art imitates life, you jabronis. There are restrictions on these things for a reason, and it's not just a suggestion. All in all, video games have taught me valuable lessons that encourage me to learn and act in moral ways. Take Mass Effect for an example. It was a great storyline that really tested you on hard decisions. Those games tapped into the reality that sometimes there isn't a clear-cut good decision in life, and that the actions you take will have consequences. Except for the really shitty ending. But that part right there, that's a positive action of a video game. Another example is Fallout. For all its problems, it really challenged you on how you would face some things. Like, do you know how hard it is to be a bad guy in Fallout? Trying to get Jericho to join me in Fallout 3 was hard because I just didn't want to do bad shit, and it never seemed to be enough. You couldn't nuke Megaton because then Jericho would be dead, so you literally have to go around just fucking killing people all across the wasteland, stealing from them, and you have to do it a lot just to get them on your side. I don't really like playing bad guys in video games anyway. At 16, Modern Warfare 2 came out, and I played No Russian, or the infamous airport mission, and it was intense, and it felt wrong back then to do that. 9 years later, at 25, I played it again for this video, and it still made me feel so uncomfortable. And this is where I really think the strength of my argument comes from. Violence in video games should make you feel uncomfortable. Because violent shit happens in everyday life and we have to face it all the fucking time. Video games didn't come up with this. Movies have been doing it, television has been doing it. You know, it's not a new concept. We've been at war with each other since the dawn of time. Video games are violent, but they don't cause violence. Look, I'm not expecting this video to make any massive changes or help society in any way. I think it's just important that we have a conversation. The societal and political influences on this issue reach way further than the PlayStation in some basement. The people who are committing these crimes are mentally ill, evil, and hate-filled people. Something larger than video games, and that's the discussion we as a society should be having. I just know that personally, I've never rage quit so hard that I wanted to shoot up a school or a Walmart. Healthy and normal individuals don't think about things like that. They usually just go to the fridge, look in it for 5 minutes, and go back to playing whatever the fuck they were before. So when the news airs footage from these events, gives out names and photographs of these evil fucks, and talks about kill counts, it just gives those people notoriety, and that's causing a bigger problem than some kid who just wants to play Minecraft in his basement. You gotta know that kids watch the TV when it's on, and So when the news airs things like body counts and people going to school to kill kids, that's heavy for a 7-year-old to digest. Blaming video games, which give kids a break from reality, is just gonna further alienate people, from each other. Video game players won't talk to non-video game players about these real issues because you have one side just yelling at the other and the other just trying to enjoy their time. Which makes it really hard when I hear politicians blame video games. It's just hilarious because, taking away the stress relief that video games provides will actually help people be less wound up and less, in an intense mindset. It's really sad because these people who blame video games, these politicians specifically, they have the power to make actual change. And instead of doing their actual jobs, they just continue to point the finger at anything but themselves. And it's sad because people die. And if any parents or older generations are watching this, which I highly doubt anyone but my 12 friends are, video games aren't hurting your children. Don't buy Grand Theft Auto for your 6-year-old. Instead, show them something like Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. How you interact with them matters way more than what video games they play. Hug your kids. Talk to them honestly about tough things. And then at the end of the day, just let them be kids. In conclusion, I'd really just like to say this. These events that keep happening, they're really, really scary. Some people turn to religion or their leaders for comfort or options or really just a direction to move their lives in, to make some understanding of what the fuck is happening. And it's really hard, and I know some of you don't get it, but we turn to video games for comfort in these times. Instead of trying to change video games so we can help society, maybe we should try and change society so we aren't such violent people.